Thank you for being here this afternoon. Last night was the 52nd consecutive night of violent activity in downtown Portland targeting federal facilities and federal properties, mainly the Mark Hatfield Federal Courthouse. The department's mission is very clear. We are charged with protecting federal facilities across the country. We have been protecting the courthouse in downtown Portland since 1997 when it first opened. We began to see a rise in violent activity targeting federal facilities in late May in Portland, coinciding with the death of George Floyd. Let me reiterate that the department fully supports those who wish to peacefully protest. Let me say this again, we support and we will protect those who want to peacefully protest. Unfortunately, what we are seeing in Portland every night, roughly from midnight to 4:30 or 5 a.m., is the complete opposite. Again, what is occurring in Portland in the early hours of every morning is not peaceful protesting. These individuals are organized and they have one mission in mind: to burn down or to cause extreme damage to the federal courthouse and to law enforcement officers. At times, we also see them targeting city property. These individuals congregate in the same area night after night. We see them planning their attacks. And yet the city of Portland takes little to no action to stop or disperse this crowd. These individuals carry lasers, baseball bats, explosive fireworks, metal pipes, glass bottles, accelerants, and other weapons, all targeting federal facilities and federal law enforcement. And yet the city of Portland takes little to no action. These individuals have repeatedly destroyed protective fencing, extensively graffitied the courthouse, torn plywood down from the courthouse and lit it on fire, have erected barriers to block entrances to courthouses, attempted to breach the courthouse, have thrown explosive materials in the courthouse, and again, the city of Portland takes little to no action. The reasons increased DHS personnel are important, or in Portland, is twofold. One, violent criminal activity every single night for 52 nights. And two, the lack of action from city officials and law enforcement. Department law enforcement officers are there to protect a symbol of justice, the courthouse. We mostly do that in a very defensive posture. However, we have been forced, because of lack of local law enforcement presence, to take measures such as arrest to protect our officials. The law is clear on what our authority entails. Specifically, federal statute states that the Secretary of Homeland Security, and I'm quoting, shall protect buildings, grounds, and property that are owned, occupied, and secured by the federal government. The law goes on to state that the department can conduct investigations, again I'm quoting, on and off property in question, on offenses that may have been committed against property owned and occupied by the federal government or persons on that property. In other words, we are expressly allowed to leave federal property to conduct investigations and arrest individuals who have damaged federal property. We do this, of course, in conjunction with the Department of Justice. Many of our law enforcement officers in Portland have other responsibilities around the country. They are away from their families and putting their lives at risk every night. The smear attacks leveled against our officers is disgusting. As it relates to CBP officers deployed in Portland, these highly trained officers are in multi-camouflage wear because they work on the southwest border and they work in an environment that demands that. That is their everyday uniform, and it is completely appropriate. They have insignia on their uniforms that read police, and they have patches, and the acting commissioner will talk about that in a little bit, that indicate which agency they are from. Let me repeat, these officers are not military. Let's not confuse that. I've seen inaccurate press reporting accusing them of being military. They are not military. They are civilian police officers. These police officers are not stormtroopers. They are not the Gestapo, as some have described them. That description is offensive, it's hyperbolic, and it's dishonest. And every law enforcement officer and every reasonable American knows this. While I look forward to the day that our officers are redeployed back to their regular day-to-day mission, we will not shrink from our duty because of this violence. I've heard the mayor of Portland recently state that the federal government is to blame for this violence. Rational people know that is not true. He would have you believe that enforcing federal law incites violence. he would have you believe that holding criminals accountable incites violence. In the last 52 days, Portland has declared a riot on numerous occasions because of this nightly violence. And while this action helps, unfortunately, they only take this action when city officials or local law enforcement are targeted, not federal. On July 3rd, before any surge of DHS law enforcement resources arrived in Portland, the mayor said the violence, and I quote, has been going on for more than a month now. Groups continue to target the Justice Center. They continue to hurt small businesses, and these attacks undermine public safety. These words are true today as they were before DHS law enforcement arrived in the city of Portland. My message is very simple. If you're looking to peacefully protest in Portland, the department respects your right to do so. Please do so away from the violent activity that is taking place near the courthouse on a nightly basis for your own safety. If you are a violent rioter looking to inflict damage to federal property or law enforcement officers, you need to find another line of work. We will not retreat. We will continue to take the appropriate action to protect our facilities and our law enforcement officers. If you're a local leader, now is the time to step up and protect your community. Work with the department and other federal authorities in Portland to responsibly bring this nightly violence to a close. And if you're in the media, report the facts, all the facts. Do not glamorize the anarchists and the criminals. And do not perpetuate the false narratives many of us have seen recently. I pulled two headlines before coming down here today. One, U.S. official calls protest anarchist. Inaccurate and very misleading. Individuals trying to set fire to a building are no longer protesting, they are criminals. I, or any other senior official at the department, has no problem with peaceful protesters. Said that a couple of times, I'll say that again. Second headline, unidentified federal agents are detaining protesters in Portland. Again, inaccurate and false. As you've heard I say, you'll hear Acting Commissioner Morgan say, all officers are identified as police law enforcement officers. We are only targeting and arresting those who have been identified as committing criminal acts, like any other law enforcement agency does across the country every single day of the week. We all have a responsibility to condone the violent activity that is occurring night after night. I was in Portland last week. It's a beautiful city, but unfortunately I saw buildings and businesses shut down and boarded up. I was briefed that the violence has cost the city businesses roughly $23 million in lost revenue. We cannot let one of our cities continue to experience this lawlessness night after night. Let me turn it over now to Chris Klein, who's our Deputy Director of our Federal Protective Service, FPS. FPS has the mission to protect federal property across the country. Deputy Director Klein will walk you through the role of FPS, as well as the operational summary of the past few nights. After that, we'll have Acting CBP Commissioner Mark Morgan. We'll talk to you about the role that CBP is playing in Portland. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. So, as the Secretary mentioned, the Federal Protective Service, or FPS, we were established in 1971 as part of the General Services Administration with the responsibility for protecting federally owned buildings and property. FPS was transferred to the Department of Homeland Security in 2002 as part of the Homeland Security Act. And like the Secretary mentioned, we're responsible for the protection of public buildings and grounds that are owned, occupied, or secured by the federal government. Since May 28th, just to give you some background, we've observed over 425 demonstrations and 260 attacks at federal facilities across the country. These attacks include bullets fired at federal facilities, arson, and objects thrown through windows. Actually, on May 29th, at a federal facility in Oakland, California, during a pretty violent demonstration, 2 of our protective security officers were shot in a drive-by shooting. One of those protective security officers, Pat Underwood, died of his injuries. As you're probably aware, in Portland, the Multnomah County Justice Center has been under attack by violent demonstrators for the last 52 days. They actually paint, that facility is painted every morning. It's been painted about 47 times in the last 52 days. Directly adjacent to the Justice Center, on one side to the north, is the Edith Green Wendell Wyatt Federal Building. It's one of our federal facilities we protect. And to the south is the Hatfield United States Courthouse, which has been a primary target of recent attacks. We've noticed during the demonstrations and violence at the Justice Center that some of that violence started creeping over to our two federal facilities, and our staff that's normally assigned to Portland was quickly overwhelmed. Due to the number of demonstrations and attacks that we were seeing in Portland, we requested support from CBP and ICE. Within our authority, the Secretary mentioned our law enforcement authority. It's Title 40, Section 1315 of the United States Code. We have the ability to cross-designate DHS officers and agents with that authority when we need their assistance to protect a federal facility. There's a process to do that. There's Attorney General guidelines that were established in 2005 on what is required for someone to have that 1315 authority. So we have to ensure that the training of those officers and agents are meet the requirement of the Attorney General guidelines. And secondly, we have to provide those other DHS officers and agents with specific training on FPS authority and jurisdiction so they know what they're responsible for. I want to highlight what took place over the last 24 hours. This has been a recurring issue in Portland. So typically between the hours of 6 p.m. and 11 p.m., see peaceful, a normal demonstration that you might see, a march, social advocacy, and FPS, we deal with about 900 of those a year. It's a pretty simple process. We coordinate with the group. We provide an area for them to do their demonstration. And then once they're done, we clean up and they go home. 900 a year, 99.9 of those are peaceful. But last night at midnight, violent demonstrators blocked the streets around the Hatfield Courthouse, the Justice Center we mentioned earlier, and the Edith Green Wendell Wyatt Federal Building. So the streets were blocked. At 12:55 a.m., we observed someone taking pictures of the water intake system at the Edith Green Federal Building. Later that night, a Twitter user tweeted, "So we can now shut off the water to the buildings the feds are staying in to make it a nightmare for them." At 1:20, protesters were beginning to bang on the walls of the Hatfield Courthouse. And I think if you've seen images of that, we've got plywood on the front of that. We did paint that plywood with paint that can't catch on fire. So demonstrators were banging on those walls trying to tear the plywood off. A short while later, protesters were kicking the main doors of the courthouse and shining lasers at officers. About 20 minutes later, a fire was reported at what used to be the elk statue in the middle of the city park across the street from the Hatfield Courthouse. This is an area where violent demonstrators typically are meeting at nighttime. A short while later, the group has grown increasingly violent and aggressive. The plywood protecting the Hatfield Courthouse was taken down, and a window was broken while protesters were attempting to breach the courthouse. Several hard objects, including canned food and glass bottles, were thrown at our officers who were out to move them. Protesters advanced towards, engaged the officers again, throwing water bottles and other hard objects, fireworks, and using lasers. We had talked about, you've seen the green lasers that are being used out there. We have 3 officers who currently have eye injuries, and they may not recover sight in those eyes from those laser attacks. We have purchased anti-laze glasses, if you will. These are glasses that the officers are wearing now to prevent those eye injuries. At 3:29 this morning, the protesters smashed the glass of the courthouse with a fire extinguisher and attempted to throw commercial-grade fireworks inside the courthouse through the broken glass. Once again, our teams went outside to push them away from the front of the Hatfield Courthouse. The teams faced significant resistance from the crowds. Fireworks and glass bottles were thrown at the officers, and protesters attempted to light a tree on fire directly in front of the Hatfield Courthouse. We did make a total of 7 arrests last night. 2 of those were for 18 U.S.C. 111, which is assault on a federal law enforcement officer. The other 5 were for misdemeanor charges of failure to comply with instructions or vandalism, but at a misdemeanor level. I do want to quickly discuss the uniforms that our officers are wearing out there, and I know Mr. Morgan has brought some examples of what his officers are wearing. This is typical. What I'm wearing is the typical FPS uniform that our officers are wearing in Portland. Because of the nature of the assignment they're working, they are wearing long sleeves. They wear an external vest carrier with their ballistics vest inside. The panels on the back Police Homeland Security. The panel's on the front. Police DHS, it has the name Williams. We are going to convert the name to their badge number because about 38 of our officers that are out there have been doxxed and their personal information has been put online. And they wear a badge on the front. Next photo, please. So, you know, we've got some CBP officers out there assisting us with our performance of our duties. This is their typical uniform. Mr. Morgan will get into more detail on that later. But it's a standard uniform. It is more tactical, but it's a standard uniform that these teams wear day to day. And next slide, please. And this is the ICE Special Reaction Team officers. Same type of uniform, camouflage, but you can see the police panels in the front and the back, the SRT, and then their badge or their patch on the side there. Mr. Morgan, thank you.
I'm going to be brief. The CBP's role with respect to what's happening in Portland is really straightforward. As part of the Department of Homeland Security, CBP is there to support FPS. And you heard with respect to their primary mission to defend a federal property. And as this country's largest law enforcement organization in the United States, we have a considerable amount of highly trained tactical units that provides an immediate response capability with respect to a wide, vast array of high-risk incidents. And they are highly and specialized, received high training and specialized training in skills and tactics. We have our SRT, we call our Special Response Team, and that's the tactical unit that's attached to our Office of Field Operations. In addition to that, as I'm sure everyone's heard the past few days, BORTAC. That's our specialized tactical team that's assigned to our United States Border Patrol. These agents and officers are among the most highly trained agents and officers that we have within CBP, and that includes training in riot control. In fact, BORTAC was established in 1984 precisely to respond to riot control in detention facilities. The Special Response Team of OFO that I mentioned, they have an extensive experience with respect to responding to massed protests and riots at our land ports of entry, and they've been doing that for a very long time. In addition to that, BORTAC and SRT, these teams are dispatched to help local, state, and federal law enforcement organizations throughout the United States with respect to a variety of law enforcement operations. They've been doing this for decades. A couple of things, too, that I want to foot stomp on that the Secretary said, and both Deputy Director Klein. With respect to the arrests you've seen, specifically with respect to the units BORTAC that you've seen out there in the past few days, I want to make sure everybody understands that these arrests are highly coordinated within the incident command there at Portland. FPS has the lead, and as Deputy Klein said, there are a multitude of agencies that are there. We're one entity that's there. Every single arrest made is coordinated within that unified command, and they are narrowly targeted, and they're done so in accordance with established procedures and authorities, as the Secretary mentioned. For example, as already been mentioned, individuals who are with intent, willfully, arming themselves with weapons. They come there each and every night. They, with intent, arm themselves with a barrage of weapons with the intent to destroy federal property and seriously injure federal law enforcement officers. Those are the individuals that we're talking about. So when you see a CBP BORTAC agent or a SRT officer that is out there, they are doing so in that very targeted fashion to go after somebody that has committed a federal crime. And that very narrow target approach, what I'm talking about specifically, are those who have actually intentionally harmed a federal officer. So, and they're doing so while these agents and officers are protecting the federal property. So we are, in that case, we will make a targeted arrest based on probable cause. And that includes, as the Secretary said, even if that subject goes off the property. It just makes common sense. We're not going to allow somebody to walk up to the federal property, assault a federal officer or agent, and because then they walk off federal property, then we're going to say, oh, we can't go arrest you. Well, that doesn't make sense. Of course we're going to arrest you, and we have the authority to make that arrest, and we will continue to do that. So what this means is we're not patrolling the streets of Portland as been falsely reported multiple times in the past few days. I'd like to address two other persistent questions that come up. First, unmarked vehicles. Look, I've been in law enforcement for almost 3 decades. The use of unmarked vehicles is a standard procedure, a standard practice among every local, state, and federal law enforcement agency in this country, actually in the world. It's nothing new. But it's especially important under these circumstances. Every one of us known, every one of us in the past few weeks has seen what have they been doing. I call these individuals criminals, not the peaceful protesters, but the individuals, again, with intent that are going to go out and actually target marked vehicles. We've seen it time and time again. We've seen marked patrol vehicles in the last few weeks among a variety of cities through this country on fire. We all know about the story in New York where an incendiary device was actually thrown inside a marked vehicle while there were uniformed officers inside the vehicle. So yeah, I think not only is it a common practice among law enforcement, but also in these circumstances, it makes sense to use an unmarked vehicle. Not only first and foremost for the protection of the officers and agents doing their job to protect federal property and arresting criminals, but also for the protection of the public. And the last thing I'd like to talk about is the uniform markings. There has been a tremendous amount of false information out there. I've seen news reporting after news reporting, tweet after tweet saying, quote, unidentified, masked stormtroopers. Again, I want to foot stomp on the secretary said. It is offensive to refer to these dedicated men and women that are out there as law enforcement professionals to make that reference. It is disgusting, and it's also a lie. As we can see, we've shown you time and time again. So you saw the markings that Deputy Director Klein put out. I wanted to blow that up to show you. Our BORTAC agents, for example, this is the identification every single one of them has on their uniform. And this is a baseline. I wanted to bring a real live version. This is what they're wearing. This is a real live version of what they're wearing. And this is a baseline of all the different identifications that they have. So first and foremost, you see clearly marked that they are part of the Customs and Border Protection. The second line of marking is it shows the component within CBP that they're associated with. And this instant, Border Patrol. Clearly police. It's marked on the front and the back, clearly, every single agent. In addition to that, they have a unique identifier. Deputy Director Klein said he doesn't have his officers wear name tags because they're being doxxed. That's exactly right. That's another thing that's absolutely disgusting. So they're not only jeopardizing the lives of the agents, but they're also jeopardizing the lives of their families as they're putting out their home information and they're suggesting that individuals go to their homes. So yes, I, as the acting commissioner, have authorized and supported removing their names from their uniform. Instead, what we have, though, is a personal identifier. So we have that, so we can identify, and we have each identifier associated with a specific name, so we have all that information internally, and we'll share that with the appropriate entities when it's necessary. Our SRT teams, it's the same thing, right? Clearly identified. Different color uniform, clearly identified. So I hope that puts to rest the lies and the false rumors about that they're not properly marked. The last thing that I'll mention about this as well is there's been some additional information out there about how they identify themselves. You will find in each and every instance when we approach somebody who we believe, who we have probable cause, who has committed a federal crime, we do identify ourselves as either police or a federal agent. That's the truth. Thank you.
We open it up to a few questions.
Neva, we'll start with you.
Oh, you want to call it out?
Neva?
Okay.
Good afternoon. Can you tell us how many people in total have been arrested by DHS authorities since this all began? And also, what are you doing for DHS to try to de-escalate the situation and work with the Portland authorities?
Right. So the number I have is since July 4th, which is really when you saw an increased presence there in Portland, there's been 43 federal arrests. Now, that's not only by DHS officials, but that's also, we have other federal law enforcement there. U.S. Marshals are there that take place in some of these activities as well. So 43 is the number that I have. But again, as Deputy Director indicated, there's arrest every night, so that number's going to fluctuate. What have I done to de-escalate? So if you go back a week to a week and a half, I placed a phone call to the mayor and to the governor. It was very specific. What do you need from the department to help address this situation, to bring the violence to a close, and still allow the peaceful protesters to protest each and every night? I can give you personnel, I can give you or I can give you no personnel. I can give you capabilities, and I can give you other types of assets to help you address this if you have been overwhelmed. Their response was, no thanks, and please leave the city and take all of your law enforcement with you. That's almost a quote. That was on Wednesday. I didn't do anything with that. That was a conversation. What I saw was later that evening and the next day, they started tweeting about this. They started tweeting about our conversation and turned it into a political issue for them. I, of course, had to respond to that. But again, as you heard in my remarks, I'm willing to work with them. We need to de-escalate. We need to find a peaceful outcome to what is going on, again, for 52 nights. I asked the mayor, I asked the governor, how long do you plan to have this continue? Is it 82 nights? Is it 92 nights? Again, no response. So we'll continue to work with them. FPS has a good local relationship there with the authorities in Portland. They'll continue to do that. Again, we stand ready. I'm ready to pull my officers out of there if the violence stops. Portland is unique. There's no other city like it right now that we see this violence at federal courthouses. We have no other teams like has been described here in any other city. It's just Portland. And unfortunately, we've seen this from Portland in the past. In 2018, we had an ICE facility laid siege to for 28 days, while local law enforcement, local officials did nothing about that. We had to surge federal resources in to clear a path to get individuals in and out of that facility. So there's a little bit of a pattern here that obviously I'm concerned about, and we're trying to work with them. I want to find a peaceful solution, but at the end of the day, we have to, as you've heard, we have to protect the federal property and the law enforcement officers there. Yep.
Thank you for having this, Mr. Secretary. You said yesterday that you do not need the permission from local mayors as well as state governors in order to deploy these teams. I'm aware that in addition to the CBP agents that are in Portland as well as others, you have rapid deployment teams that include various federal officials as well. Where are those teams now in terms of cities throughout the United States, and where are you planning on dispatching those teams?
I just answered that. Our teams are in Portland.
You only have them in Portland.
Our teams are in Portland.
And in terms of the president's comments yesterday and listing many other cities that are that he is ready to deploy federal agents to, are you deploying those rapid?
Well, I'll let you ask the president of the White House that question. They can answer that. What I can tell you is the department will continue to do our authorized mission in any city across the country. So you pick a major metropolitan city, we have hundreds of law enforcement officers there that are doing criminal work, criminal activity, targeting gangs, targeting illicit narcotics, and we'll continue to do that. We'll surge there if we need to. We'll continue to do what our authority is under the Department of Homeland Security, and of course we're going to come to the assistance of other federal agencies that need assistance as well. We've done that for the entire life of the department, and we'll continue to do that.
In terms of U.S. Code 240.13.15, I'm just curious because I know that the subsection that you read, it does say conducting investigations on and off property. But the question that I think many people have is, what exactly is going into those investigations? What level of probable cause are you getting? Because some people are saying that they're being detained on the sidewalk by an agent that they don't recognize and being put into an unmarked vehicle. So what exactly is the standard of probable cause that you're getting, and how is that not a violation of civil liberties?
I'll let the Deputy Director talk a little bit about that because he's working with the U.S. Attorney, Department of Justice there again. But what I would, sort of the big picture question is, this is a very difficult environment to work in when you have 500, 600 violent individuals, violent criminals across the street from you trying to inflict harm on your property and at law enforcement officers. We do our best to identify who they are using that probable cause. What we don't do is we don't go into that crowd. We don't try to go into a violent crowd of 400 people and try to arrest people. That's dangerous for our law enforcement officers. It's dangerous for those individuals as well. So we try to identify individuals as best we can, again, working with the entire federal presence there in Portland and address it that way. But let's have Chris talk to you a little bit about that.
Thank you. So the 40 U.S.C. 1315 authority does allow us to do investigations both on and off the property based on a crime occurring or an alleged crime occurring on federal property. So in this instance, you're probably talking about the van. So the CBP, the Border Patrol officers, have been cross-designated with our authority. The individual that they were questioning was in a crowd and in an area where an individual was aiming a laser at the eyes of officers. We have people in the area that observe, keep track of him, where he's going. We don't want to go in the crowd because then it's a fight between our guys and the demonstrators. So we wait till the individual gets into a somewhat quiet area where we don't expect to have violence when we want to talk to him. In this instance, the CBP officers approached him, and you saw the approach. It was peaceful. There was no tackle. There was no get on the ground. They wanted to talk to him. But as they approached him, they noticed that coming in their direction were violent demonstrators that now see what's going on, and they want to go help. So they asked the individual, please get in the van, and they did take them to an area that was safe for both the officers and the individual to do the questioning. So it's not a custodial arrest. We need to question this individual to find out what their role was in this laser pointing. And unfortunately got kind of spun out of control with the rhetoric about what happened. It was a simple engagement. The individual was with the CBP officers for less than 20 minutes while they did the questioning. They had to get out of the area so they weren't attacked. And then they conducted the questioning and they released the individual because they did not have what they needed. The U.S. Attorney's Office is consulted on every engagement that our officers are doing. The U.S. Attorney's Office is also at our roll call every evening to make sure that our officers and agents are aware of the use of force, rules of engagement, authority, jurisdiction. They spend a lot of time on that, so that's how that came about.
Good, thanks.
Yes, sir.
Christina.
What actions would you like to see from the mayor or governor that could help potentially quell the violence?
Again, I think the difference between Portland and any other city, and I'll just take Washington, D.C., because that's where we're here. There's a reason that we don't have violent anarchists for 52 nights in D.C., because we have local police and local officials that are working with federal partners to address any type of violent criminal activity like that. So that's my ask. What we know is there's an environment in Portland right now that unless these individuals attack city property, federal or Portland police property, they don't do anything. They don't take any action. They don't make any arrests. They don't do anything of the like. As long as it's pointed at federal facilities, it's hands off for them. So my ask would be to engage like any other city across this country engages, work with local law enforcement. If you don't want to talk to me, that's fine. Work with local law enforcement and do the job, and let's address the violent criminal activity so that the peaceful protesting can continue.
You called on me before. Two questions. The first is, federal police have hit a Navy veteran who said that he was standing there peacefully. The video shows him standing there. He was pepper sprayed. His right hand was broken. Why are those specific actions appropriate? And will officers face any sort of consequences? Because at least on the video, it doesn't seem like he's trying to damage federal property. It seems like he's a veteran standing there protesting.
Yes, if Chris has any additional information, those officers are U.S. Marshals in that video that you see there. So again, not part of the Department of Homeland Security, so I don't have all the information. You might ask the Department of Justice. I'm sure they're looking at that and would have some further insights to it.
Yes, sir. And that's exactly right. The Deputy U.S. Marshal that was part of the team at the Hatfield Courthouse. We've seen what you've seen. The Department of Justice Office of Inspector General is conducting an investigation into that. There was an allegation of excessive use of force, and the Department of Justice OIG is investigating.
My second question is, what do you say to critics who say, and you touched on this a bit in your remarks, but what do you say to critics who say that the U.S. government, specifically your agency, is acting like an authoritarian regime, especially because you have the governor of Oregon saying that she spoke to you, specifically Secretary Wolf, and said that she doesn't want your officers in her state, that she doesn't need them, that they're escalating tensions?
Well, what I would say is if you did your job from a local perspective, we wouldn't be there. Just like we're not in any other city with this type of deployment force having to protect other courthouses. The fact that we are there is because local officials are not taking action. They are not protecting, they're not helping to address the situation. I think that is the key difference in whether we look at any other metropolitan city that FPS has facilities that they are protecting. They have a partnership with local law enforcement, and they help protect that facility. They'll help make local arrests. They'll help disperse crowds. They'll help do a variety of things when violent activity is occurring. That is not taking place in Portland. So that's the difference between what we see in Portland and what we see any other place. Now, regarding whether it was the mayor or the the governor not wanting us there, okay, I appreciate that. We still have a job to do. So we're going to have to continue to protect that federal facility. What we know is if we left tomorrow, they would burn that building down. I'm sure you're not advocating for that, but they would burn that building down. They have stated that publicly. We know they've tried. We have them on video trying that multiple different times. So we have a responsibility. I read it to you. It says the secretary shall protect buildings. It doesn't say you can. It doesn't give me the option. It says I shall. So I'm continuing to use my resources to protect those buildings.
I have a quick clarifying question, please. The president said yesterday that you're saying that you're not expanding this at all, because the president said very clearly that this was going to expand.
I think well, let's make sure that we're talking about two very different things here. We're talking about Portland, which is unique, about violent anarchists in Portland versus normal city criminal activity and behavior by gangs, by criminal elements throughout the country. Those are two different things. The president, you can certainly ask the White House and others. That's what he was referring to. So what we have in Portland is very different than we see in any other city. Yep.
Yes. I was just going to ask, thank you for having this. You said these are well organized and there's large numbers of people night after night. Do you have information about who is supporting this criminal activity? Can you name
Again, I would defer you to the Department of Justice. FBI is on ground. They are investigating just that question. So they're going to have the best information for you on that. Yep.
You said you spoke to the governor and the mayor at one point and asked them what they needed from you. Have you or any other federal official spoken to the mayor or the governor since that opening conversation, or has it just been all over Twitter?
So I talked to the mayor and the governor, gave them my number, told them to certainly reach out to me if they needed anything from the federal government, again, to bring this to a close. My phone is operating, it's working. I'm happy to talk with them anytime they want to talk.
But that hasn't happened since that first conversation.
Again, the conversation that we had was very definitive on what actions they would like DHS to take. Those actions were not helpful. It wasn't a productive dialogue on their side. I came with options for them and was really listening on what it is that they needed. It wasn't productive, but I'm happy to talk to them at any point. Yeah.
Hi, thanks for doing this. Could you perhaps let us know how much this operation in Portland has cost the taxpayer? And could you also confirm between the different agencies how many officers have been sent there? We're seeing reports of about 60. Is that accurate?
So I don't have the cost on what this is costing the federal government. I'm sure we could probably figure that out. We have a number of agents. I'm not going to give out an exact number for operational security reasons, but we have a force now that can protect our federal property. You heard the deputy director talk about not only the Hatfield Courthouse, the Edith Green, but we have other properties there as well. So we need to make sure that we're able to protect all of them.
Hi, could you just clarify, the officers that are in Portland are acting under the executive order, the June 26th executive order on, and what the president was talking about when he was talking about other cities, is that something different? Can you just sort of tell us just sort of clarify, what are we talking about?
Sorry, I thought we were clear. So the individuals that are in Portland are acting under FPS authority, Department of Homeland Security authority. Doesn't have anything to do with an executive order. This is existing authority that has been on the books for decades. That is the authority they're using to go in and to protect a federal facility. FPS protects almost 9,000 facilities around the country. There's no other facility that has this type of violent activity night after night after night. So that's the authority they're using. And again, Portland is different than any other city that we're talking about that has normal, generalized criminal activity and crime, what we call street crime, whether it's drugs, guns, or the like. Two totally different scenarios that are going on.
You mentioned that 43 people were arrested. How many of those were charged? Do you know how many?
I don't offhand, but Chris or Mark, do you guys know offhand? Okay.
We'd have to confirm with the U.S. Attorney's Office. There's a long process to go from detention to final adjudication of the charges. But that goes on every night.
The second question, the U.S. Attorney called for the DHS Inspector General to look at the incident with the van, and he also called for the incident last week, but that's not you, that's the marshal. What's your reaction to that?
Again, I would say that we welcome the Inspector General's review of the case. What we know is that the officers were properly trained. You heard about that. What we've seen from video is that they acted appropriately. So we're confident that the IG's review, once it's complete, is going to demonstrate that the officers did what they were trained to do and operated within their authority. So I'm not going to comment any more about that investigation, but that's our opinion and that's our view. Okay.
Mr. Secretary, if those officers, hearing especially what Acting Commissioner Morgan said about some of those tactical agents and the training that they received, if that is sufficient training for the riot control for the riots that we're seeing there now, then why was it included in a memo used to brief you that they lacked the training to respond to mass demonstrations?
Yeah, I've seen some of the reporting about some type of memo. I've never seen any type of memo. I think what is clear that you heard today, what we have confirmed over and over again, is that these individuals, these highly specialized units that the commissioner talked about, have received advanced training. This is what they do. There's a reason we did not source law enforcement officers from the Transportation Security Administration within DHS. They don't have this training. It's a reason we didn't pick other OFO officers in blue uniforms that you see back here. They don't have this training. It's these specialized units that have this training specifically selected because they can deal with this force protection. They can deal with large groups of individuals. So all I know is that is the absolute truth. That is what we're operating under. You've heard FPS talk about additional training that FPS does once they come on site. And so that's the facts, and that's how we've laid them out. So thank you.
You did not see that memo in your briefing book?
Thank you.
You're saying you did not see that memo in your briefing book?